All right, looks like we're live. Today's guest really needs no introduction. I'm pretty sure everybody that's subbed to my channel already knows who he is. The local red-pilled multimillionaire, entrepreneur, car enthusiast, Richard Cooper. How you been doing, Rich?
What's up, guys? Doing good, man. Doing good. It's nice to see you. I think this is our first one-on-one cast.
Yeah. Last time we talked, there was you had a little beef going on with the MGTOW community, but this time it's a little more positive. You've got a brand new book you just came out with. You seem to be on a roll right now. Your channel obviously always has a lot of momentum, so a lot of people are getting a lot of value out of your content.
Yeah. The book was just really taking everything that I had learned over the last 3 or 4 years or so, because it was around 2016 that I really fully started to unplug from comforting lies, and just collected all the the big aha moments, the big standouts, a lot of the stuff that kept popping up over and over again when I was doing one-on-one consults, and just kind of compiled it all into something that turned out to be about 200 pages, and you can chop through in about a day.
Yeah. Before we get into the book, well, I want to read one little small. I'm not sure, because you gave me the review copy. I'm not sure if this is actually inside the cover or if it's on the back of the book or whatever. But it says, "I dedicate this book to all the men around the world that never had strong, masculine male role models growing up to teach them about the cold, hard truth of modern women in the world we live in." So. When I first found your channel, I found your Total Debt Freedom. I was looking for some advice on.
Okay.
I had some credit cards, and I guess no pun intended, I had a little bit of a train wreck where I had a DUI, and I was going through a situation, and I found your channel. At that point in time, I didn't even know what hypergamy was. That word wasn't even in my my vocabulary.
I didn't either. That was probably around the same time, because I started that channel in 2010 or 11, I think. So. Yeah, we were in the same spot then.
So what occurred in your life that made you shift from that guy that I saw in those videos to this Richard Cooper on the Entrepreneurs and Cars channel? What red pilled you?
Well, there's two things. I mean, the first thing that really broke my safe world theory, because it's really like the collapse of this comforting lie that you have to deal with in life as a guy. I know for some guys it even has nothing to do with women. Like, it might be some sort of event or something that happened in a job or the military or running their own business. And for me, I started to see about 2010 to 12, there was a big push from credit card companies and banks here in Canada to change legislation. So when it gets to the point where financial institutions want to change law, you have to start asking your questions like, why are they doing this, when what my company was doing at the time was saving people a ton of money, getting them out of debt faster without damaging their credit bureau nearly as bad as what like a bankruptcy or any of the other offerings that were on the table would do. And I went and I spent like 2 years heading up this organization. I was going down to Queen's Park lobbying the government. I spent like 50 or 60 grand on lobbyists. It was really just like, for lack of a better term, freaking exhausting, right? And by the end of that, I realized, well, I was told my whole life, just do the right thing as a guy. They tell men and women two totally different things, right? They tell men, be a stand-up guy and do the right thing. But they tell women some other narrative, which kind of usually ties into, well, you do what's right for you, girl. And, hearing the whole, do the right thing my entire life, doing the right thing with my business, and, planning out to make sure people got value at the end of the day. And then seeing the government actually change the laws in favor to what the banks and credit card companies wanted at the end of the day, which was really to protect their profit margins. I remember the lobbyist said at one time when we were meeting with this bureaucrat, he was like, they might as well rename this bill protecting credit card profits bill, something along that line. And that kind of like, set me aback, right? I'm like, why the hell is the government doing this? Like, why are they behaving this way? Why are the banks, being so litigious and so pushy with something like this for something that's good for people's personal financial, situation? And long story short, dawns on you, well, they don't really care, and there's two ways to look at it. There's like one half of the equation where it's like, nobody cares about me, and the world sucks, and you can sulk and kind of cry about it. And then there's the other part where just like, nobody cares, and you just kind of like move on from it. And I sulked for a bit, and then I kind of moved into the nobody cares, category, and I just kind of, went from there. The second thing that really red pilled me was going through the divorce machine. And then after I got out of the divorce machine, that took like about 2.5 years in total. Started dating the single mommy for about 3 years. And that was like a totally different scene to what I was dealing with before. Cause I had this sense, at least, before I got married, not to date single moms. It was only after I got, divorced and I had a child with me that I figured, all right, well, I'm 39 at the time. Let's see what's out there. And pretty much every chick had a child, and sometimes multiple, sometimes from multiple different fathers. And it was like, there was this whole new, I don't know, set of rules that I didn't get the rule book on. And I was just surprised so many times, through the course of the relationship, when it ended as well. And I was like, okay, this is what sent me down the rabbit hole of the red pill and rational male and all the other stuff that I've done with that, with Evo Psych, and kind of studying, human nature from that perspective. So people really just not being what I thought they were.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. So, it sounds like you are definitely the guy to take this sort of advice from, because there's a big difference between, some of the guys in the manosphere, more of the like MGTOW and kind of black pilled style content. A lot of those guys, they've been through divorces and it crushed them. Like it killed them. They want nothing to do with women after that. And you seem to be a person who went through it and you kind of survived it. You held on to a lot of what you had before. Mm-hmm. You seem to still be doing pretty good for yourself. And, a lot of these guys, they just don't come out on the winning end. So there has to be something that you did that they didn't do. So, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I totally get it. I mean, I started around a lot of MGTOW content when I first kind of started talking about things around this. I remember watching MGTOW 101. You probably remember his channel. I think that you kind of started up your channel around the same time too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Miggy used to do, he used to grab press pieces, for the most part, interviews, and really just kind of highlight some stuff. And it was really pointing to female nature. And, you got to understand as a guy that, life's going to drop crap in your way. It's going to flick boogers at you. It's going to fling crap at you. And, you can either choose to just let yourself get coated with it, or you can kind of wash it all off and move forward and learn something from it. And one of the skills that all successful entrepreneurs have, and maybe this is part of the reason why I kind of move through it faster than some others, and some people kind of get really stuck on it, is that you have to be able to solve problems. And all I did was I looked at, my beliefs plugged into, for lack of a better term, a broken belief system that didn't work. And I just, okay, well, that's a problem. So what does work? Like, what is the solution? Like, how do you deal with this behavior? How do you deal with this particular problem, and unplug from that crap set of rules and plug it into a new set of rules? And that's really all that I do with everything in my life. Like, it just doesn't limit itself to women, dating, LTRs or anything like that. It's what I apply to everything that I do in my life when it comes to money, when it comes to business transactions. Like, people that know me intimately on a close basis have seen me drop people like a stone. Like, as soon as I figure out what they're all about, I'm done with them, right? Like, they're gone. Like, one of the chapters in my book, I talk about hiring slowly and firing quickly. And that's a skill that guys need to learn. And that's why I put that in the book. And that's why I believe it's important that guys really do pay close attention to that and apply it to their lives.
Yeah, that's important. I know when you start out the first chapter of the book, one of the first things you talk about is men being the disposable sex.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of flipping that, turning the table on them, and I guess sort of having the, backbone to let women go when you feel like, you start to see red flags. That's important for guys to have. But I think most guys are conditioned in this day and age really to pedestalize women. I mean, it's just the way it is. Everybody kind of knows that. And the manosphere, it's something we've always talked about. Yeah. What do you think about toxic masculinity? I know that's a cliche topic, but what do you think about this this narrative? Because most guys, I think 50% of guys nowadays grow up without fathers. So they're being raised by their mother. They're hearing this toxic masculinity stuff.
Yeah.
They really have no idea how to be a man. And, what do you think about that narrative?
Yeah, I think the stats like 43% of children today are raised in single parent households, which legitimately translates into single mothers because women get 80% of custody orders still, right? So, and then you have to separate women that have kids of these alpha seeds and they never either involve the father or the father's only involved or whatever it is. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of guys today that are being raised by single moms. So they don't know what conventional masculinity looks like. And all that society has been preaching about and barking about for the last decade, anyway, that I've seen it is, they're just renaming masculinity or conventional masculinity as toxic. So if they don't like your behaviors, or if your behaviors are not supporting a female first primary social order, they got nothing. So what they do is they just point and sputter at you and they call it toxic masculinity. It's funny because I flip the script on it and I use it a lot on social media with Twitter posts and a few other posts, and I'll actually call feminism toxic feminism. And, you'll see these, these people out there screech. It's like they'll just lose their freaking mind when you say that. But it's totally fine and okay to call conventionally masculine men toxic, right?
Right. Yeah. So they're sort of raising men to be betas.
Yeah, they're basically beta factories.
Yeah. And ironically, that's exactly what turns women off. So these guys, not only are they growing up to be soft and not masculine, but they're also not getting any women,
Yeah, well, these moms are really trying to program these boys to be something soft and cushy and kind, to keep them around. It's not to send them off in the world and to train them how to be men. It's really so that they can use their sons as they turn into adults to serve them.
Yeah. So, can you explain genuine burning desire? What this chapter is all about in your book?
Yeah, that's actually really good because I just saw this study on Twitter like 10, 15 minutes before I got on this call. I can't remember who put it out, but the summary was that something like 67+% of women will wear high heels on a date when they dig the guy's vibe. If they don't like him nearly as much, 22% of women will wear high heels. Which completely echoes what I was writing about in that chapter in my book, because on a scale of 1 to 10, you only want to mess with women that have genuine burning desire, which is like a 9 or 10 on the scale. It's right at the very top of the scale. And what that looks like is, you match with a chick on an app. Let's say she's going to message you first. She's going to ask you questions. You won't get one-word answers. You're going to get, hey, so what do you do? What do you like? I like that picture of you and your dog, or you and your bros here on this lake. What were you guys doing that day, right? Like, they're genuinely interested in you. And then when it comes down to actually setting up the date, they don't reschedule. They show up on time. They're made up. They're wearing makeup. They're wearing high heels. They smell nice. I was listening to this radio show the other day here in Toronto. And they call it Ghosted. And there's this dude that basically got ghosted by this chick. She showed up on the date. She basically timed the date so that it was at the end of her run. Okay, so she's all covered in sweat. She's in her running gear. She's got no makeup on. And she's like, yeah, I can meet you Sunday at like 10 o'clock after my run. So that's a woman that's indifferent, right? So on that scale, you've got genuine burning desire, which is a 9 or a 10. You got 7 or 8, which is a difference. And then 6 and lower is basically, you could be on fire and she could have a bottle of water in her hand and she'd walk away drinking the water. She couldn't care less what would happen to you, right? These are a lot of the thirsty betas that you see the screenshots of, when you're kind of cruising around the internet and it's like, hey guys, can you offer some feedback? Here's a field report. And it'll send you like 2 or 3 pages of screenshots. And it's like 80% of the dialogue is him messaging her. And he's like, hey, let's get together for a date. And she's like, maybe some other time, or yeah, maybe later. And he's like, well, give me your number and let's set something up. And she'll respond with something like, I don't give my number to strangers. Right. But the same woman will give her number to a guy within 3 texts if she sees him as her best possible option. So you have to understand, a lot of guys get crap results and get really frustrated with women, usually because of 2 things. 1, they're not the best version of themselves. And 2, they're chasing women that don't have genuine burning desire for them. When you're with a chick that has genuine burning desire for you, you'll know. And I explain exactly how you'll know in that chapter in the book.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're talking about there is what the sphere refers to as sexual market value as a male, what your sexual market value is.
Well, that's
What
one part of it. Cause I mean, like you could have high SMV, but a woman may not have genuine desire for you.
That's
Right.
true. Um, so would you say that's where game comes into play?
Game always comes into play. I mean, game's a nice equalizer in all areas, but yeah, looks, money, game status. We've both talked about that separately on our own channels. We don't need to beat that one too much, but yeah, to the point of desire and genuine burden desire, it's similar in that more often than not, like on a balance of probabilities, if you've got very high SMV, like if you're the best version of yourself, most women that you talk to, if you're going to open and they start talking to you, they're genuinely going to want to be with you, right? So your chances of having a better experience with women will always go up if your SMV is higher.
Right. So I've noticed, I think the biggest part of your book that you took the most time on was the red flags chapter. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing during your period after your divorce, when you were doing all the dating, you had a good time period to actually learn and date different women and find out, how to identify red flags. But what would you tell guys that are single and they're out there dating women? What should they look for and how should they identify red flags?
Yeah, I think it's easier to look for the red flags than it is to look for green flags, right? Because it's it's easier to make a list of shit that you won't tolerate in your life versus what the must-haves are. Like women will have a list of must-haves. Must be 6 foot tall, six-pack abs, 6-figure income, 6 months out of a relationship, 6 inches in the pants. They got this list of 6 6s, right? And it doesn't stop at 6. Like it's actually like it keeps going. Like there's literally hundreds. I mean, if you look some of the older writings, I think it was Royce, Chateau, Hartiste, somewhere in and around there. There was an essay around something like women's 238-point checklist of must-haves, for men. So
Yeah.
I think for guys, it's a lot easier if we just identify red flags and then decide, okay, well, this chick's got more red flags than a Chinese Communist parade. I'll put her in front, friends with benefits category. Maybe I'll plate her, but I'm sure as hell not going to get into an LTR with her. And I'd be absolutely retarded if I was going to marry a chick like this, right? But most guys don't know what to look for. So that's really why I put that chapter together. And at the end of the day, guys, like you can date chicks with the red flags if you want to. Just understand that your experience as a guy is going to deteriorate. You're not going to have the best possible experience. You're less likely to have a chick that's going to enter your frame and want to complement your life and, not be an energy vampire if she's got all the red flags, right? Like, i.e., women with daddy issues, women that have addictive personalities where it's either drugs, alcohol, box wine, shopping, returning shit to stores, on a frequent basis when they shop. There's all kinds of red flags in that list that, you can kind of go through and you'll have to decide for yourself, okay, well, these are really important to me, so I'm definitely not going to tolerate any of this stuff. I might compromise in a chick that has hissy fits, but she's at least working on that bad behavior.
Yeah. So I know, well, and just a few minutes ago, you mentioned that you married a single mother. What did you learn?
No. I did not
Nope.
marry a single mother. I don't know
Okay.
where that lie came from.
Okay.
I've heard one or two other people mention that before. No, I did not. I dated a single mother after I got divorced.
Okay. Okay. I misunderstood. So I've dated a couple of single mothers myself, I guess, before I found out about, you and Rollo and all of you guys. I sort of subconsciously knew not to take them serious because there was just something about the fact that she had to meet up with her ex constantly, which if they didn't have a child together, there's no circumstance that would permit that. It just
Men inherently know that a woman with a child in tow is going to complicate their lives, right? And we tend to avoid them for a good chunk of our lives. At some point, we make this rationalization in our head, like I did after I got divorced, like, I think I'll accommodate this now and see what this is all about.
Yeah. So I guess I think until Rollo came on the scene, nobody really considered that like cuckoldry. But I guess when he kind of smashed on the YouTube scene, he's talked about that a lot. But
Yeah.
what do you think about that? Because a lot of guys really don't understand that you're literally raising another man's seed when you date a single mother.
Yeah, you're self-cucking yourself. Yeah, you're basically choosing to cuckold yourself, right? And if that's a choice you want to make, that's fine. I mean, I get crapped on a lot because I've done quite a few videos now on the problems with dating single mothers. And again, I speak from experience, so there's not a lot of stuff in the material that I've put out that's ever been rebutted properly by any women. I mean, all I've ever heard was and that was it. But yeah, I mean, when you decide to get into a relationship with a woman that's brought into the relationship a kid or maybe multiple kids from a different relationship, sometimes different fathers. I mean, bro, I ran into times on like dating apps where you're like talking to a chick and she's like, yeah, well, I can't meet on Thursday because I've got one of my kids with the father or something like that. And you're like, one of the kids, can you explain? And they kind of elaborate, and then you figure out, well, they got like 3 kids from 3 different fathers, and you're like, we're done here.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the very least, when you're dealing with a single mother, I think every man should at least take into consideration that you could be if you were the father of one of her kids and you had to deal with the fact that she left you and now she's bringing other men around your kids, and you sort of have that cycle going on there. Maybe at one point you had a nice house together, a nice family together. You got to see your kids all the time. You had a good life. And then all of a sudden she leaves. And of course, as you said, the divorce machine, the court systems kind of screw you over a little bit. And then, your life's kind of upside down, and, or as you call the train wreck. But a lot of guys don't realize that she's already done that to somebody before you. And,
yeah,
if that's sort of how her behavior is, then who's to say she's not going to do the same thing to you? What was I going to say?
That's a good point.
Can you explain hire slowly but fire quickly? I mean, I don't want to go over the whole entire book, but can you just explain that concept to the guys out there in the chat?
So, I mean, as it relates to employment, what you guys will learn at some point is that people get hired for the resume and then they'll get fired for fit. And they'll usually get fired for fit very, very quickly. Okay. So that's just the underlying notion behind that. Now, that's a notion that you can apply to if you're an employer and you run your own business and you hire people. If you're a manager and you hire people, with friendships, with women in your life, and you even have to consider applying this rule to family members. We probably all know at least one family member that has something off with them and they are toxic and you want to keep them at arm's length, but because you share DNA with them, you'll see them over the holidays, from time to time, but you don't necessarily invite them over on a consistent basis. But I mean, the point of that chapter is watch people's behavior carefully before you put them in your inner circle. So one of the concepts that Jack Donovan talks about in his books, which are basically really just about masculinity, right? He's got The Way of Man, Becoming a Barbarian, A More Complete Beast. He's got a few others, but those are the main ones. Is, you have to draw a perimeter around your inner circle. And when you're hiring slowly, you're watching their behavior. So let's use it for dating, as an example. So you watch their behavior, you date them, maybe you're plating them, and then at some point, 6-12 months, down the road, she's giving you the, hey, LFA, where do we stand talk, right? And then at that point, you can decide for yourself if you want to get into a more intimate type of relationship with her, or if you want to invite her in as like an LTR, maybe introduce your family or stuff like that. But that's the inner perimeter. And if you ever get her into the inner perimeter, and let's say 16 months down the road, she shows you who she really is and she's a total train wreck, you get rid of her quickly. None of this, oh, well, we have a relationship together, we have a history. Like, how many guys do you know that have held on to crappy relationships where they get abused, where they should have really left months, if not years ago, because, oh, we have a history together, or, they feel like they have some equity or some buy into it, sort of thing. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to be quick when it comes to spotting big red flags and saying, this person's dangerous, they're out, done.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's an awesome chapter. I think that's one that people really need to pay attention to. Guys just aren't taught that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So what would you say that males in the chat that are watching this, what would you say they should do to capitalize on their looks, the looks part of things?
Well, take an honest assessment of where you are right now. So one of the things that I do with guys when I'm doing my one-on-one consults, I mean, most of the time I do them over the phone, so I don't see them. There's some that I do over Zoom or over Skype, but most of the time, one of the questions that I'm asking them when they're explaining, kind of like their Batman origin story, usually why they're getting crap results with women is, well, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the absolute best version of yourself. I'm not saying, compare yourself to Hollywood actors, billionaires, or anything like that, but on a scale of 1 to 10, with your entire potential being reached and you're the best version of yourself, where do you place yourself? And you'd be surprised how many guys are out there chasing women and they'll rate themselves at a 4, 5, or a 6, right? And really at that point, they should be chasing excellence, which is why I often tell guys chase excellence, not women, because we know that based on women's swiping habits on dating apps. And I want to spend a minute on this because there's some people out there that put out videos on the YouTubes of the world and they'll base it on, women's opinions, like survey information on women's opinions rather than actual behavior. For example, 70 years ago, women were less promiscuous because they reported that they lost their virginity at the average age of 21, whereas today, women lose their virginity at the average age of 16. I had a mentor when I was in my very early 20s. He was an old dude, and he grew up in the 1920s. And he was telling me that women back then were just as promiscuous as they are today, right? The difference being, though, is that women back then, because of slut shaming, are going to report promiscuity on a much lower level than what they are today, because now it's widely accepted, right? So back to the point here that we're talking about with actual behavior, we know that with dating apps, women swipe right on guys that they view as an 8 out of 10 or better. So believe it or not, women that are 3 out of 10 are swiping right on 8s, 9s, and 10s. Like, their solipsism and their entitlement is so off the chart that they're only swiping right on guys on apps that are several points higher than them on the SMV scale. So what can guys do? Don't waste your time with dating apps. If you're a 6 or 7 or lower, chase excellence. Like, work on yourself, make money, make muscles, learn game. Those are the main things, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I agree 100%. I'm not the most photogenic guy in the world. So on dating apps, I mean, I do okay on them, but in person, I do a lot better. And that's what that's the kind of advice I like to give guys too, because so many of these guys are getting blackpilled nowadays because of these dating apps.
Yeah.
And they don't realize the human impact of just actually meeting somebody in person, and your dominance, your aura, I guess your frame and all that stuff really comes into play. And, I wish guys could just understand that and get out there and, experience life a little bit. So how old were you when you decided to get on TRT?
I was probably about 43-ish, like in and around there.
How old are you now?
47.
Okay.
Yeah.
Almost halfway there.
Yeah. So, how old are you?
I'm 34.
Yeah. Okay. So, you'll start to notice at some point, like when I was about 39, 40, I was at this conference and I ran into this buddy of mine that I hadn't seen like 5 or 6 years. He lives down in Maine, right? So I don't see him that often, but I ran into him and I'm like, dude, you look good. Like, you're jacked, you're looking good. Your voice is strong. You got a lot of confidence, a ton of energy. I'm like, what's up? He goes, oh yeah, I got on TRT a few years ago. And he explained what it all was. And I knew what it was, right? Like, I picked up, what the hell was that guy's name? I think it was Dan Duchesne or something like that. And he used to write for Muscle Media 2000 back in the 90s. And he put this book together called The World Anabolic Review. So I knew all about all the, performance enhancing, compounds at the time. I didn't realize that doctors would prescribe it to you to optimize your testosterone as you age as a guy until I talked to my buddy Tony, right? So it was on the radar screen around 39. So I'm like, good, mental note. I'll keep an eye out for this when I start to see the signs. And by the time I got to like 43-ish, which also happened to be like around the same year that I had that like bad issue with that single mommy scenario. My head was all messed up, and I probably had really high cortisol levels. I probably wasn't sleeping properly. I started to notice, like, when I was going to the gym, didn't have a lot of focus. I wasn't that productive when I was working. I was starting to hold on to more belly fat. My muscle definition and tone was starting to waste away. I'm like, all right, we got to go get some blood labs done, because I think we got to find one of these clinics and see what's up. And I went in. The typical narrative that most of these clinics will give you, most of the doctors will be like, well, you're within ranges, right? So they'll pull your blood labs, and then, they'll have like low and then high, and then you'll be somewhere in the middle. Well, that'll be somewhere in the middle for a 43-year-old guy, which isn't necessarily optimized. As you get older, so usually by about the age of 25 to 30, your testosterone levels drop by about 1% to 2% per year, every single year. So it's not noticeable. For women, when they hit menopause, eggs stop dropping, and their endocrine system changes, dramatically. That's why they get these hot flashes and they have all these other issues. But for guys, it's a slow transition. It's actually called andropause. So it's a very slow transition. So you don't notice it until like one day you're at the gym like I was, and I'm like, I'd normally do an hour and 20-minute workout, and I'd go in there and I'd spend like 15, 20 minutes on bullshit body parts like forearms and calves or something like that, and I'd have no energy and I couldn't lift anything, and I was out of there. So that's when I started to realize, I got to look into this and see how to optimize my testosterone levels. And once you get dialed in, it's awesome. Like, you feel like you're 25, 30 years old again.
Yeah, I'm sure you saw the physical benefits immediately. I mean, I've been around the fitness scene for a long time, and I've seen the difference when guys do get on it. What would you say about the psychological impact? Like, did it like immediately give you like this amazing boost in confidence and just cognitive function?
Yeah, it's weird, because I mean, like, when I thought of testosterone before, I thought it was just like, muscle building, and that was it. And maybe like, sexual function, libido, sex drive, stuff like that. But it actually plays a lot more roles in your body than just that. Like, it deals with bone density, it deals with mental clarity and focus. Of course, it deals with, muscle tone and fat burning capacity and sex drive and libido and all that sort of stuff. Some of the symptoms that guys will start to experience, like if you're not waking up in the morning with morning wood, if you've got terrible focus, like if you have a lot of brain fog, if you don't have a lot of sex drive, if you notice you're storing more belly fat, like visceral, belly fat, like those are some of the standard signs that your testosterone levels have started to decline.
Yeah, you've got a fan in the chat here with a super chat, Eric Henriquez. He says, Rich, I'm 26 and I discovered the red pill 3 years ago. Before the train wreck saved me and many lessons learned. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And be sure to pick up his book, Eric. There's a lot more in there than you'll find on the YouTube channel. So what do you think about spinning plates? Because I want to give my personal, my personal experience with this. When I was younger, I just felt like, I guess I was conservative, and like I was just raised in like a traditional way. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was supposed to give all of my everything to one woman at a time.
Yeah, me too.
Even when I was a teenager or early 20s, and, I really had no reason to settle down. I still felt like that's what I was supposed to do. And because of that, I spent 8 years with somebody that I'm gonna be honest, I really had no genuine desire for. Mm-hmm. Like, I just felt like I was supposed to try to make it work.
Right.
And, I guess my situation wasn't so bad. Some guys will get married and divorced. Some guys will
they get baby too, right? In the 20s.
Yeah. They'll go through a lot worse than I went through. But, when I really got out there and started dating a lot of women, and, at the same time, and just carelessly, and I don't even have to lie about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm single and I can do it. My results have just gotten a lot better. What's your take on spinning plates?
Yeah, man, I missed out on that in my 20s too, because I did the exact same thing that you did. I mean, I basically went from like a string of relationship to relationships, and I didn't really date women non-monogamously for a good chunk of time. I think it's probably one of the most underrated tools that guys can use in their toolboxes. first you want to get clear on what it is that you want to get out of women, and especially at what stage of your life. Like in your 20s, don't get into relationships with chicks. Spin plates, date them. Just don't get into like a monogamous type of one-on-one LTR. Don't move in with a chick. Don't do any of that dumb shit until you figure out the sexual marketplace and until you've laid the foundation for your life so that your SMV does get to its peak in your 30s. It's a really powerful tool because it creates contrast and it removes problems like one-itis. Like it's almost impossible to have an unhealthy attachment to one chick that's going to dump you. If you've got a roster of 3 or 4 girls in rotation that you're dating, you might even be on like a friends with benefits type of level at that point. And you just kind of do what you want when you want, and you're making yourself your own mental point of origin, and they're going to start to try to encroach on your time. They may start to make demands. The ones that have genuine burning desire for you, like the ones that are enthusiastic to be around with you, will tolerate knowing that you're dating other women. Will tolerate 4 months in when she comes up to you and goes, "Hey, LFA, where do we stand?" And you're at the front door of your house. And you're like, "Well, the way I see it, I'm standing at the front door and I'm seeing you off. So I'll see you next Tuesday." Right. That's frame. That's mental point of origin. That's a different story when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, different times of your life. I'm not saying you can't spin plates in your 40s. You definitely can. It's definitely something that guys should do. See, I don't know. You must have seen this a few times in your life, but I mean, there's always that one guy, or not one, but literally thousands of dudes out there that they'll go get divorced. They'll meet some other chick, and it's like, "I found my one. I got my unicorn," and then he'll go wipe up the next one like right away. It's like, dude, you already screwed up with wife 1, and now you're going to get married a second time to wife 2. You dated nobody else in between that. You haven't learned anything about female nature. You haven't learned anything about yourself. Spinning plates solves all of that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's the difference between chasing women, because I think when men chase women, they find one, they get their target set on the one, and they kind of, they get that one-itis. But if you're really focused on yourself, your career, your success, things you're passionate about, maybe cars, maybe sports, weightlifting, I don't care, fishing, whatever it might be, and then you kind of just let the women, just come along as they may, because if you're doing good things with your life, if you're successful, if you've got your SMV at a decent level, you're going to have women around. That's just kind of the way it's going to go.
Right.
And, I guess that's what we call plates.
Yeah. You want to have options, right? I mean, you must have options as a guy. I mean, when you go to the grocery store and you're in the produce section, you see the bananas or the melons or whatever, you don't take the first one that's at the very top. You pick up a few, you take a sniff, you maybe squeeze it, see if it's rotten, sort of thing. It's the same thing with women, right? Like you gotta have some compare and contrast out there to decide which ones are the crap ones and which ones are the better ones. And if there's better ones that kind of like, the cream rises to the top, and you want to get into an LTR and she's, looking for more of a commitment, or you want to have kids, or whatever the next thing is for you, at least what female nature looks like. And at least that you've got somebody that's got genuine desire for you because they've stuck around and tolerated all the other stuff that you've been doing in the meantime.
Yeah. So tell me why you tell every man to own a motorcycle. I've seen you say this several times. What's the reason?
Well, I'm of course biased because I've owned several motorcycles. I mean, I stopped riding when I was 30, but I started riding when I was like 17 or 18, I think. But it's like, for thousands of years, it's like a man and his horse. The only difference is a motorcycle is a machine. It's, it's still a living, breathing machine in my view anyway, if it's got an internal combustion engine, because the whole point of that is to breathe air in and out. But, it's a mechanical device that provides a lot of freedom. They're very inexpensive. They're very fast. They're cheap on gas. Chicks dig them. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was at a party, when I was a young man, and there was women lining up, like girlfriends of guys lining up to go for a ride on the back of the bike. And they're not holding on to you in like a friendly sort of way. They're holding on to you in a promiscuous kind of way. Sometimes the hand will slide down, when they're kind of got their hand wrapped around you. So chicks dig bikes, long story short. So there's that part of it. The other part of it too is they're just amazing fun, and they force you to have balance, dexterity. They teach you to keep your head on a swivel. Are they dangerous? Of course they're dangerous. Yeah. I mean, it's not so much because the bike itself is dangerous. It's just because people don't see them and guys aren't paying attention to what's around them. They don't have situational awareness of what's happening and what's coming their way. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why. One of the things I talked about in that chapter was there was this clinical psychologist, I think, that lived, not lived, but worked on the main floor of the Century home that I was in when I was first running one of the first offices that I set up. So I signed a lease for this office for like 2 years. And there was this frumpy old kind of like fat lady. She used to come up once a week and yell at us for being too loud, and she'd go back down. But my office window looked out in the parking lot, and she always had this constant flow of patients, right? About 60% of them were women, and the other 40% were dudes. There was never a guy that would show up for an appointment with a motorcycle. And this was just around the time that I stopped riding motorcycles. And I started to ask myself why. And when you have a bike, it's like therapy for men, right? Girl breaks up with you, you get fired at your job, you don't get the promotion, your roommate's being a prick, whatever, you get out on your bike and you just rip and you have fun. It's a beautiful thing. I think every guy at some point should consider owning a motorcycle for sure.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's no worse feeling than having your girlfriend ask you if she can take a ride on another dude's bike.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's probably the
dude,
worst.
I had a lot of guys that were like, "So, how was the ride? Is everything okay?" So, yeah, it's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. So, what do you mean by master violence? You talk about that in your book as well. I haven't had the chance to even go over that part of it.
So women love guys that are civil but have the capacity for lethality, right? We know this. We know this by their search habits on porn sites and even on Google, because the sorts of things that women look for that arouse them are, I think the top search sites, this was in an interview actually with Jordan Peterson, was something like werewolf, vampire, billionaire, surgeon, and pirates, like just weird shit like that, right? And the whole point of being able to master violence is if the need is called upon you. Like, violence is not the answer to every problem out there, but if the need is called upon you to resort to violence, excuse me, as a guy, it's incumbent upon you to be able to be violent when the need is called upon you. So think about it. If you're in bed with your chick and you hear a bang in the middle of the night, is she going to be like, LFA, go get this one, please, please, please? Or are you going to sit there and go, nah, you get this one because I got the last one, sort of thing? It's always the dude that gets out of bed to deal with the bang in the night, right? So most guys are pussies today, though, right? I mean, like, most guys are weaker, softer versions of their grandfathers and their great grandfathers before them. There's old jokes out there. You see the memes all the time. It's like, my generation's going to start a revolution. You see the picture of that, like, drill sergeant. He's like, your generation can't even start a lawnmower, sort of thing. There's a lot of weak guys out there that could solve a lot of their masculinity issues by going to a dojo, learning striking skills from boxing, defense skills from Krav Maga. Just pick something, but learn competency skills around using your hands and your body in a violent manner should the need be called upon you. Most guys can't do that. You get a knife stuck in your bank at an ATM. Do you know how to handle it? Most guys don't, right?
Yeah, that's a big problem that I have with, and I know Canada's a little even more tight than the United States is on these issues. But I know back in 2003, when I was in high school, I was a football player, and it was normal for the head coach to literally punch me in the face or to hit me with something.
Yeah.
And the guy played in the NFL. He was somebody that we all looked up to. He was this, super successful guy. He would come to practice with a Super Bowl ring on. And for him to hit me, it was like such an honor. Nowadays, that coach would be fired. He'd be thrown in jail. It's completely different. And that goes with the toxic masculinity narrative. Boys are taught to not fight. But, young boys who are fairly harmless, they're supposed to have these little fights. Every animal in the animal kingdom fights. It's what they do to express their dominance over the others.
Bingo.
Whether it's Jordan Peterson talks about the lobsters, literally dogs, it doesn't matter. Monkeys, they all do it.
Yep.
And it's really stripping men of, I guess, a lot of life experience and a lot of courage gaining by telling them that they shouldn't be getting in these fights. Or, they shouldn't be masculine.
Yeah, and that's a part of masculinity, is being able to, deal with hand-to-hand combats, type of situations, being able to defend yourself, defend your family, defend your woman, whatever it is. It's not women that are going to defend you. You've got to learn how to do it yourself.
Yeah. So this isn't in your book, but I wanted to ask you, what's your take on incels? I know you guys over there on Rule Zero, you've discussed this topic a few times, but I haven't really had the time to go back and look at it. And I'm sure, some people in the audience want to know what you think about that, because it's honestly I would say it might be the most popular subsection of the whole entire manosphere. I mean, a lot of guys gravitate towards that style of content because they really identify with it. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think, or what type of advice would you give to those guys?
Well, by definition, I think we're all incels at one point in our lives, even guys that have done well with women. I mean, I think it was a week or two before my 20th birthday that I lost my virginity, right? And, for years before that, friends of mine were talking about banging and getting laid, and you're like, this sounds like fun. How come I can't get it, right? But then again, nobody taught me game. Nobody taught me what, like, aside from just being myself, which is all that I really got as a teenager, which doesn't work, by the way. You have to learn what women are attracted to and how to game them. And, like, you got to really pay attention to what women respond to. So there's an element of guys that will just be incels, by choice. Okay, fine. But if that's not what you want to be, then there's things that you can do to improve on that, right? And if you want to get better results with women, like, on a balance of probabilities, more often than not, more guys can go and get the the solutions to whatever problem they have, whether it's, I don't know, they're too fat, they're too broke, they've got a crappy circle of influence, they spend way too much time playing video games or masturbating. Like, there's any number of things that like put guys into the involuntary celibate category. But I don't think there's a lot of stuff in our lives as guys that we can say that, well, this was just luck. Excuse me. This was just a hand that I was drawn. There's nothing I can do about it. Okay. What are the big arguments? It's I'm not tall enough. Well, I got a friend that's 5'4" that slayed tons of poon when I knew him growing up, in my 20s.
Exactly.
Right. But he had lots of game. We used to call him Pocket Hercules, right? Because he was like this short dude with like a nice V-taper. So he just basically looks maxed in every other category that he could, but he still slayed tons of poon, right? So it's not like you can't, improve yourself. You can. It's just you have to decide for yourself, do I want to hang out in the doom category, or do I want to, do the work and level up? Again, I mean, if you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, well, I'm an incel and that sucks and I want to get girls, but you rate yourself like a 4 out of 10. Again, women aren't swiping right on 4s out of 10. They're swiping right on guys that they deem 8 out of 10 or better. So be the 8 out of 10 guy for yourself.
Yeah, I think a lot of them kind of fall into this like self-hate, self-pity. I think it becomes an addiction. They become addicted to that and they just can't break that cycle. But I know, I mean, me personally, I guess I'm not that bad looking. I'm 6 feet tall. I'm doing pretty well for myself. But there was a time when I was pretty out of shape. I guess in my around 22 or 23, I'd taken some time off the gym. I was eating pizza, eating burgers, drinking beer all the time. And the reaction that I got from women just wasn't good. I didn't realize it at the time. But as soon as I got back into the gym and really started, taking care of myself, I would start to notice women, they would actually be intimidated by me when I would talk to them. And it felt like it just gave me so much confidence. It was like, wow, I'm no longer intimidated by them. Now a lot of them are intimidated by me. And I wish a lot of incels out there could just see that, if you get jacked, if you can see your abs, women are going to find you attractive. I mean, it's a very small percentage of men out there that, wouldn't meet that threshold.
Yeah, I mean, I can take a look at myself. Like, I got no hair, I got bad eyesight. The vast majority of my upper body was burned with hot water scalding when I was a toddler. So I got 3rd-degree burns on my chest and my arms. I've got no issues with women. Okay. Like, you can manufacture reasons why you can't get the girls. That's fine. You know, you can hang out in that category, or you can just look at it and be like, okay, I'm losing my hair. This looks stupid. I'm not going to hold on to these, like, you know, puffs over here and some scraps up over here. Shave your head and have a look. You know, if you got a nice beard, you know, fill it out and get it shaped properly. You know, find a nice Persian barber that knows how to shape a beard. You got scars on your body. Okay, fine. Go to the gym and smash weights. You can't change your skin, but you can change the muscle under the skin, sort of thing. So that's just the way that I looked at it, right? I just have a hard time sulking about stuff that, you know, I can't control, right? What I'll do is I'll be like, okay, fine. I can't control the fact that my eyesight's not the greatest and my hair doesn't exist anymore, but there's other things that I can do, right? I can make bank. I know how to be masculine. I know how to run game. You know, there's different things that you can do to level up in other areas. So it's maxing out in stuff that you can control and ignoring what you can't.
Yeah. So if somebody runs a search on YouTube and types hypergamy, I don't know if you know this, but you're the first video that comes up. It's your you in front of that whatchamacallit, that whiteboard, that PowerPoint.
Okay.
You were doing there.
Okay.
So that was the first time I learned about the word hypergamy. It was from that video. I mean, I guess I kind of knew what it was, but I just didn't know the terminology, and I didn't really take the time to research it. And I would say roughly 3 years ago, if you were to watch that video, YouTube would send you down an algorithm of MGTOW videos, because that's like the most popular word in the MGTOW community. So that's sort of, I guess that's where I went early on in my time on YouTube. But I definitely overcame that. I started to realize it was like the guys that were making the MGTOW videos, I didn't have a whole lot in common with. They were really just, they were victims. You know, they were looking for excuses. They just had this quitter victim mindset, and I just couldn't tolerate it. So that's kind of why I stopped making that content and started making more of, I guess, educational and maybe inspiring videos. What do you think about MGTOW? Because by all means, like, you could fit the definition of a MGTOW if you wanted to, like, you know, you focus on yourself, you're your own mental point of origin. You're currently single, you know, what else does it take to be a MGTOW? Like, you could be that, but you still, kind of stand against it. So,
well, I'm not against it. Like, I see what they see, and I agree with the observations that are made. I don't have any disagreement with the observations. It's the response to the observations. So I think MGTOW is probably a nice place to visit for a little bit, especially if you've been, you know, like had your heart broken, or if you've gone through the divorce machine or something like that, and you take a break and kind of go monk mode for a little bit. I think that's totally fine. But the problem is that it's kind of like you said, it's kind of like a victim mindset, and it sounds an awful lot like feminism, right? You know, where, you know, oh, well, we're oppressed by the patriarchy, and women make 78 cents for every dollar that a man makes, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know, a lot of the guys that have been hanging out in the doom and gloom corner for a little bit too long are starting to say the same, you know, same sorts of things. Like, oh, if you're not at least, excuse me, 6 foot tall, you're screwed. If your skin's not, you know, the right color, you're screwed. If you don't have the right jawline, you're screwed. If you don't have hair, you're screwed, you know. And, you know, there's a lot of pointing and sputtering at the opposite sex. And I don't think that's the right way to approach life. You know, to me, it's a quitter's mindset, like you point out. It's kind of like the victim mindset. And I'm more about, okay, well, let's take a map and let's plot out, you know, where the mines are on the map, and put little red dots on them and just kind of go around them. And that's basically the way that I recommend guys deal with it. And I got a chapter in my book, and I talk a little bit about MGTOW and black pill and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's a place that most guys will probably visit at some point. Just don't spend too much time in a place where you feel sorry for yourself. And, you know, it's the whole misery loves company sort of thing. And there's better things that you could be doing with your time rather than hating on, you know, 50% of the world population. I did a video at one point, I think it was in the summertime actually, because I had this coaching client, very, very successful C-suite business guy that makes like $2.5 million a year. He's got like $20 million worth of assets. And he had a really, really hard time surrendering to female nature. And I made that video specifically for him, but you know, in a public sort of level. And the thing that you got to get through your head as a guy is women aren't good or bad. You know, they're just women, and you have to surrender to what their nature is and accept it for what it is, and then respond in a way that is going to serve you better. Because that's what mental point of origin is. I don't think that you're a mental point of origin if you're going to sulk and whine too much, right? But if you see things as they are, like, okay, I live in Canada, taxation blows. Like, I pay close to 60% of my income in taxes, whether it's in income taxes at the gas pump or wherever else I'm going. I'm spending a shit ton of money in taxes. I accept that. Okay, that's where I live. I get free healthcare. It's pretty safe to live here. It's not a bad place overall. It's got a lot of drawbacks in my view, and I'm probably not going to be here for the autumn years of my life. I'll leave in the next 10 or 15 years for sure, but I have to accept that that's where I am right now. That's the card that I've been dealt, and that's what I have to work with. So I just roll with it.
Yeah. What's your take? And I've seen you discuss this topic quite a bit. You might be, I know you're one of the most popular guys in the sphere, but you're also, you know, something that comes along with that is being one of the most hated. I know there's a lot of trolls out there, and there's a lot of, you know, you just get a lot of that. And I see a lot of videos made about you, and I'm kind of like, why are these guys focusing on like one little negative detail? Like, you're completely overlooking the body of work and just pointing out one flaw, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, they'll take things out of context, and then they'll try to manipulate them and reserve it back to guys that are easily persuadable, right? And then they recruit more guys, you know, sort of thing. And I mean, I look at it this way. So I can't remember what her name was, but there was some Twitch thought she was selling her bathwater, and now she's selling like used condoms to thirsty betas now. What's her name?
I have no idea. If somebody in the chat knows. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just call her like, you know, the pink hair, you know, Twitch thought. So I could sit there and, you know, go through all of her material. I don't like her, you know, to begin with. Obviously, there's nothing in it for me. I'm not entertained by her. I'm kind of, you know, repulsed by the guys that are throwing money at this Twitch thought. You know, I could spend all this time, you know, complaining about it, making videos about, you know, why she's this, that, and the other thing, and pointing out flaws in her life, or I could just ignore it. And if I see things that I don't like, I just ignore it. I mean, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. If you want to have a conversation about it, cool, let's have that conversation. But I don't get the like the whole making hit videos on people sort of thing. I don't get that. Like, to me, that's like a female type of behavior. You know, it's very gossipy and blah blah blah. Like, there's one guy that does 8-hour streams on Saturdays. I can't remember his name now. I know John's got a lot more of a beef with him than anybody else, but it's, I don't know. I mean, Saturday night, I'm banging. I'm not sitting around, you know, complaining with a bunch of other guys that aren't banging about somebody else that is banging and going on for about 8 hours.
You're talking about dictionary, MGTOW dictionary. Yeah. You know, I've actually spoke with him off the air and a few times on streams, and he's actually not that bad of a guy. He just likes making those videos. Like, that's kind of the style of content he makes. He pushes it a little bit too far, but that's kind of his shtick. That's just what he does. And I'm not sure why.
And their families, right? Like, he's.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
That's way across the line. Yeah. I saw what he was doing with Rolo, and he's mentioned your daughter as well. Like, that's definitely crossing the line there. But you know, like they say, people, they don't hate down.
Comes from beneath. Nobody ever gets jealous of losers, right? I always tell guys this, like, how do you deal with hate, Rich? Like, you know, you must get a lot of haters. And I truthfully don't. Like, the vast majority of people that I interact with, I have a great experience with, and most people are extremely appreciative. Like that super chat you guys saw earlier, they're very grateful. I mean, my book, the Unplugged Alpha, and if I can plug it, actually, I'm not sure if you got a link for it, but it is on Amazon. 5-star reviews, guys. You know, if you don't like me, cool, that's fine. It doesn't bother me. It's like, I don't even think about you.
Yeah, after this video is over, I'll post a link for it and on Amazon. I don't have it on there right now, but if you guys want to purchase it, I'll be sure to put it in the description of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you don't have much more time.
I got like 5-10 minutes. Any other questions? Yeah.
What's that?
I got about 5 or 10 more minutes if you got any other questions. I'm here for you, bro.
Yeah, I was gonna say something. Can't remember what I was about to say. Oh yeah. The way that I view it, and this is sort of how the market works. If you can charge, if people are willing to pay $1,000 an hour, then that's how much it's worth.
Yeah. Well, I charge a lot more.
It's
I charge $2,000 an hour, and people complain about that. It's like, fine, just don't pay for it. Book somebody
exactly.
else. You know, if you can't afford my rate, then book somebody else. See, I deal with entrepreneurs. I deal with airline pilots. I deal with doctors and lawyers because I've worked with them throughout my entire life. Like I have experience deal with them. And when they ask me for my time, I charge for what I'm worth. If you can't pay what I'm worth, that's fine. There's lots of other guys out there that do one-on-one coaching. Book them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that, I think people have different mindsets, but I find it to be inspiring because it's like, wow, if this guy can charge this much, what do I need to do to get to a point where I can charge that much?
I got a business coach that charges $6,000 an hour. I actually had him on a Playing to Win broadcast a month and a half ago. He's my old business coach for about 10 years ago. And he's like, I was looking at all your stuff towards the end of the broadcast. He goes, you're not charging enough for what you're doing. Right. So yeah. I'm explicitly working at the higher level, and I want to unfuck entrepreneurs. I want to have a conversation with Elon Musk because we should be on the moon by now, but that guy spends way too much time making stupid choices with women. Those are the guys that I want to have an impact on. I'm not doing the basic kind of like lower level stuff. There's like 900 free videos on my channel. There's a book with dense information on it that you can get through in one day that's less than $10. I mean, you get it for like $6.79 on Kindle right now. I think it's on sale. There's lots of stuff that I have out there that's completely free. So I always find it's interesting when, somebody's like, oh, you're a grifter and you charge way too much money. You're taking advantage of people and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, I don't. You know who's taking advantage of people? That chick that's selling condoms, like used condoms to thirsty betas, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Definitely. They're actually getting something out of what they get from you. And what I know, me personally, I went the college route first. That was my idea of how I was going to better myself. But it took me years to unlearn what they taught me in college. Like I was being indoctrinated by their BS, to be honest.
BS in post-secondary, yeah.
Yeah, and the advice that you can get just from male role models, I mean, that will go a lot further because you don't even need a degree. You don't need any education to be an entrepreneur. If you just know what you're doing.
I've spent a lot of money on leveling myself up. I mean, there was one year that I spent close to $40,000 either attending conferences, going to retreats, or hiring coaches to help me level up. So, I mean, you get paid what you're worth. I've done over 1,000 calls at that rate now. Well, not at that rate. The rate's gone up over time, but I've done over 1,000 calls now, and my rate probably over $1,000. I've done well over 300 calls at that rate. And if you look at my rating on Clarity, which is a public domain, I mean, you can't manipulate the testimonials and the reviews. They're all 5-star with fantastic ratings, right? So people get value out of what it is that they're paying me for my time. If you value your time and you deliver high levels of value, then you can charge for it. It's as simple as that. But the problem is a lot of these guys have these limiting beliefs because probably they're probably sitting around with a bunch of other guys on Saturday night, not getting laid, complaining about other guys that are making bank. And it's like, well, is that a good use of your time? Is there a skill that you can learn? Is there something that you can do to level up so that you can become more valuable so that you can bill yourself at $2,000 an hour? I know a guy that runs a mastermind. He charges $100,000 a year for a membership, right? So there's all these price points out there. You just don't have to limit yourself to these lower tier minimum wage sort of like levels. And I got loads of free stuff, guys. I got 900 free videos on my channel. Go watch them all. There's days worth of content there.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess on that note, we can go ahead and wrap this one up. So where can they find your book? And obviously they can find you at your YouTube channel, but what do you have going on and what do you want to say to them before we go?
Yeah, just guys, the whole point of this conversation, this book that I wrote, really, I think I was talking to John from Bulldog Mindset, and you said something in a comment, and John wanted to talk to me about the book because he picked it up on the launch day. He sent me a text and he said, bro, this is gold. So I'm like, okay, so let's do a chat. The whole point of this book, guys, is I wanted to be able to take everything that I've learned on the channel, distill it in something that you can rip through in a day. It's 200 pages. It's dense, very easy to read, and very easy to understand, so you can get a load of value out of it. Yeah, grab it. I mean, it's on Amazon. It's called the Unplugged Alpha. If you don't know who I am, I have a YouTube channel called Entrepreneurs in Cars. I've also got a clips channel that kind of distills the longer form content into some shorter stuff, but you can go find it all there on the YouTubes.
Okay. All right. So I guess on that, we will go ahead and hang on. I got to block this guy real quick. Go ahead and end this one. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and thanks, Rich, for stopping by.
You got it, brother. Appreciate you hosting me. It's always a pleasure to connect with a guy like you, man.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you guys later.
See you guys later. Peace.